This will be chapter 14, the third lecture. We'll be dealing with the section in your notes called Germany and the Protestant Reformation. In other words, this is the political impact of the Reformation and the political background. So who is in charge of all of these territories where the Reformation is taking place? The main point, the main idea that you need to get down is that Luther and the Protestants benefited from where they were geographically, physically in Europe. They were in the middle of this area known as the Holy Roman Empire, which is basically modern-day Germany. It's not Germany then. It's a series of little city-states and principalities and territories that are, you can see on this map, really complicated. The Protestants and Luther, this was in their advantage. They were far away from the center of the Catholic Church in Rome. So they could kind of get away with their rebellion because they were up here where there was not a strong government and not a strong central political leader. And had there been one of those, they probably would have been stopped. So geography benefited Luther and the Protestants. That's the main idea. So this is a map of what we call the Holy Roman Empire, which is Central Europe. You can see France on the west here, and the south is the Italian states, and the east is Eastern Europe, of course, Poland and Russia. But this is right in the heart of Europe. And it's this area known as the Holy Roman Empire. This has a long and complicated history starting after the fall of the real Roman Empire, but we just need to know that this is what's here, and they don't have a strong central ruler. Instead, what they have are 7 electors. These are like governors, princes. There is also a leader called the Holy Roman Emperor, the HRE, Holy Roman Emperor. But that's a relatively weak position. What's the real power is local. All of these different colored territories here have a local prince called an elector. That is who makes the decisions. So local government is very powerful, and Luther makes friends and alliances with these local leaders, and they protect him. Frederick the Wise is an example. He was the Prince of Saxony, that purple territory right up in the middle there. You can see that. This was in their advantage. Okay, so the name of the dynasty that rules this whole area, although it's kind of weak, they're the Habsburgs. That's their family name. They are the Holy Roman Emperors. And they're essentially German-speaking people. They're really Austrian, technically. We consider them Austrian, but they speak German. So they are the royal family who serves as the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire for a long time, hundreds of years. Their capital city is Vienna, which is, of course, the capital of Austria today, and they are very, very Catholic. So they're kind of a weak dynasty in this part of Europe, but they're going to get a lot stronger starting right now. So the Habsburgs take a step forward in terms of their power with this marriage. The Habsburg emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, was a guy named Maximilian I. This is about a generation before Martin Luther. And there's this arranged marriage. He marries a woman named Mary of Burgundy. And this marriage is the beginning of the Habsburgs' status as a powerful international family. Before this, they ruled just some minor territories, and they were, of course, competing against all these princes. This marriage brings them onto the stage a little bit more prominently. So this marriage brings in the German-speaking parts of Europe with Burgundy. And Burgundy is also known as Flanders. That's basically what's now Belgium today. Okay, and that's not actually where Burgundy is in France today, but at this time the Burgundy was the Netherlands and Belgium. Very valuable land. The Flanders, that's where all the riches are. Okay, and so this marriage brings the Habsburgs into international prestige, and this is kind of like, Europe's first power couple of the modern age, Max and Mary. So then there's Ferdinand and Isabella down in Spain. Right at the same time, these guys are kind of like the first power couple, all right? So this marriage brings them into prominence. So who's not happy with this marriage? The French. Their dynasty is known as the Valois, V-A-L-O-I-S. They wanted Burgundy. Remember, Burgundy had fought against France in the 100 Years' War. The Burgundians had taken the side of the English. So there's this long, bitter history between France and Burgundy, and the French wanted to control Burgundy because pretty much they're French-speaking people. But now Burgundy goes to the Habsburgs, the Holy Roman Empire, and the French are pretty bitter. And they're going to do some interesting things with their alliances later on to show their displeasure with this marriage. So I want you to look at the family tree on page 467 of your textbook. This indicates to you the beginning of the Habsburg dynasty as a very prominent family. You'll notice they hook in with a lot of other important families. They hook in with Ferdinand and Isabella, with their kid marrying their kid. You see they're going to hook in with the Tudors in England later on, Henry VIII. And they're the descendants of Maximilian and Mary are going to become very powerful leaders of Central Europe and Spain. And particularly their grandson, whose name is Charles V, and their great-grandson, who's Philip II. These guys are like the most powerful Holy Roman emperors and leaders of Central Europe and Spain that we're ever going to have. So these guys, there's a well-positioned marriage. All right? Oh, there's also some inbreeding. If you notice that family tree reconnects between Philip and Mary Tudor, that's inbreeding. That's going to also cause some trouble genetically for the Habsburgs, because you're not supposed to do that. Don't marry your cousins. All right. So they marry. This quote, other nations wage war. You, Austria, marry. This is their foreign policy, okay? They're not big on war. Their armies aren't ever very good, but their strategy is strategic marriage. This is how they're going to roll in history, all right? So here's Charles V, that grandson, this guy that inherits a lot of territories from these grandparents that are, again, look at that family tree, 467. He inherits, and there's a map also. Once you're done looking at that tree, look over onto page 468, and there's a really good map of all the territory that Charles V inherited. He is the Holy Roman Emperor at the time of Luther. So make sure you get that. He's the political leader. He's kind of weak, but he's the one in charge, technically, at the time of Luther, and he's competing against all these princes for power. This guy has territories around the world because by this point the Spanish, his grandparents Ferdinand and Isabella, have conquered most of the New World, and at least the part that's around where we live in southern Arizona and parts of Mexico and South America. So he gets that from his one set of grandparents. He gets the Netherlands from the other grandmother. He gets Spain. He gets parts of the Italian peninsula. He's got a lot. So study that map and maybe write down the different areas of Europe and the New World that Charles V inherits. It's all a result of that good marriage by Maximilian and Mary. Okay, so this guy, Charles V, believes that he's like the big deal. He's the last medieval emperor. He has this sense of duty where he's gonna say, I'm going to preserve the religious and political unity of Western Europe. That's how he sees himself. It's not going to happen, but he thought that he might make it happen. He's not a reformer. The German states, the HRE, where Luther lives, becomes neglected to the other parts of this new global empire that this guy leads. The German states get the least attention. He's got bigger problems on his plate, as we'll learn. And so that's why Luther's able to kind of get away with it. This guy doesn't reform. The princes of the German states stay strong, and Luther and the Protestants thrive. All right, so what's going on with the political impact of Luther's beliefs? Well, religion is a public matter. It's not a private issue. It's not freedom of choice. The religion where you live in Europe is determined by your prince, your king, or your emperor. There really isn't any form of religious liberty. So the fact that now there's two forms of Christianity, Catholic and Protestant, this is going to be a problem. Luther's ideas have stirred up the middle class of the German states, and he's got them fired up in terms of this is a German thing now. Martin Luther's our German brother, and we together are going to rebel against these people from Rome, the Catholic Church and its leadership. So not only do people get attracted to Luther's ideas for economic reasons and social reasons and financial reasons, but there's also a political element. Like Luther speaks for Germans now, and he wrote that new translation of the New Testament in German. And he kind of, as I said the other day, became one of the main people that contribute to the formation of the modern German language. So Luther's now a sort of a patriotic hero for people that live in this mess of a territory called the Holy Roman Empire. His ideas appealed to these princes, who quickly became Protestant for various reasons. Luther wrote some publications like this one, the Address to the Christian Nobility of the German Nation. Basically, he urged the princes of the German states to reform the church. He urged them to have some sort of national pride, fight the Catholics, not physically necessarily, but reform the church, fight them spiritually. And he actually said, go ahead and confiscate all the Catholic Church's land in this area. Like, we're sick of paying taxes to the Catholic leadership. Take the land, take the monasteries. So he did urge radical behavior. It's funny how he didn't want the peasants doing it, but if it was among these princes, he actually said, go ahead and do some pretty rebellious things. Confiscate, their farms, their monasteries, all this stuff. Go ahead. It's time to act. He knew where his support was with, and it was with these German princes. So the German princes had political and economic motives for supporting Luther. Got it? Patriotism. They could make money. They could keep more of their money. They could take some of that land. They were going to be enriched if they listened to Luther. So overall, the effect of the Protestant Reformation in these German states is kind of a disaster. Charles V, there he is again, a little bit of an older man here with his beard. Charles V tried, he's a staunch Catholic, he's Habsburg, he doesn't want Protestants going on in one of his territories. But this was not the only territory he ruled. He had this huge empire, and there were many other issues in that empire, and so this Protestant issue took kind of a back seat. Charles V's other main concerns were he had the Turks invading from up through the Middle East, almost to the gates of Vienna. So he had other wars he was fighting. He's also fighting the French in what are known as the Habsburg-Valois Wars. He's conquered the New World, and he's now running this global empire. He is not very effective in stopping the spread of Protestants. So again, meanwhile, Charles V, is fighting these massive dynastic wars, which we first learn about in chapter 13, the Renaissance chapter. They're known as the Habsburg-Valois Wars, and they're happening at the same time as the Reformation, although they have nothing to do with religion. They're about territory and who's going to take over part of the Italian city-states, and they're fought, of course, in Italy and in these German states. And they're mainly fought, and number one reason is over Burgundy. The Habsburgs, Charles V, really wanted that valuable province of Burgundy, and the French wanted it too, and they duke it out something like 5 times over 30 years. They're political wars, okay? As part of these wars, the French, the Valois, actually supported the Protestant princes in their effort to spread Protestantism, which is really bizarre because French are Catholic. The French kings support the Protestant princes of Central Europe because they wanted to keep that area divided and out of the Habsburgs' control. Their main enemy are the Habsburgs. So politics become more important than even religion for most people here in the age of the Reformation. So it's not as pure as we might think. So these wars going on all around Luther actually advanced the spread of the Protestant cause because it did indeed keep the German states isolated and divided. Back to the map. The Habsburgs, Charles V, is never able to centralize this area and take full authority because he's got all these wars going on and distractions. And the Catholic Church, therefore, can't get up there and get involved because there's warfare going on. So this helps the Protestants, all right? But there are still religious issues to settle. So Charles V gets together with all the German princes in 1555, which is pretty much around the time these other wars are coming to an end. And there's already been peasant revolts, which we learned about last time. There's been fighting on a small scale for religious reasons here in Central Europe. And so as sort of a last-ditch effort, they got to make peace with the religious issue. Charles V gets together with the German princes, the electors, and they legalize Lutheranism. That's it, just that. It's called the Peace of Augsburg, 1555, kind of an important turning point. It finally legalizes the fact that you are allowed to be a Protestant, a Lutheran. Okay? However, we can't coexist. We can't have Catholics and Protestants in the same village, in the same territory. No one believes in that. They don't believe that religious tolerance is possible. So what the agreement is that each prince will determine the religion of the territory that they control. So the religion of each territory is determined by the prince, the local leader. And it's either going to be Catholic or Lutheran, one or the other, that's it. And you either like it or you leave. And so if you are not a Catholic and you live, and if you are a Protestant and you happen to live in a territory now where there's a Catholic prince, you either have to convert to Catholicism or you have to leave and be a refugee and go to one of these random territories where Lutheranism is now the religion of choice. So, is this religious freedom? Sort of. It's not what we would say is religious freedom, but it's better than open warfare. The princes get to pick. It's freedom for them, but not for everyday people. But did it bring peace? Yes, temporarily it did. There's going to be peace pretty much in these German states among religions up until about 1618. That's the start of the next big religious war called the 30 Years' War. But so for about 50 years, give or take, this does bring peace into the territories of Central Europe, and you either got to be Lutheran or you got to be Catholic. And the Lutherans get away with all this. They have success because, just to sum up for you, there's all this fighting, there's a weak emperor, and there's just too much going on for anyone to shut these guys down.